Today, we live in a world of nearly 7,000 thriving languages, each unique in their scripture, syntax, and phonology. From the dawn of time, languages have always been a medium for humankind to communicate thoughts and share expressions. But apart from the obvious, we decided to dig a bit deeper and see how prominent language really is when it comes to the human mind. To this end, we looked at it from two perspectives: the correlations between languages affecting human behavior and human behavior affecting languages. For our first venture into this topic, we decided to research a bit on some solid examples for whether it was true, and found that there was in fact a correlation between human behavior and language. The first discovery we stumbled upon was a poetic excerpt from Robert Johnson's The Fisher King and the Handless Maiden, which spoke of how Sanskrit had 96 words for love, ancient Persian had 80, Greek had 3, yet English had just 1. The narrator felt that if the English vocabulary revolved more around love, it would develop a richer and kinder culture. He linked this to the idea that English speakers were as likely to die from loneliness as an Eskimo was to die from clumsiness if he didn't have 30 words for snow. It wasn't just a matter of poeticism, but he rather seemed to think it was a matter of survival. And on that, we researched further and looked at Wall Street Journal article by Stanford cognitive scientist Lera Boroditsky on the matter. The research she carried out focused on the Pormpuraawan Aboriginal community in Australia. She cites that this community relies on the cardinal directions rather than the traditional left and right system used in English. This leads to the Pormpuraawans being more aware of their surroundings and sense of direction than English speakers when in unfamiliar territory. Within the same article, she does a comparative between English and Japanese and Spanish. English, in its tone, is a much more active language than either Japanese or Spanish, and this reflects in a multitude of ways. For example, a further research study concluded that English speakers were more likely to remember who popped balloons at a party or spilled drinks than Japanese or Spanish speakers. This is further reflected in the respective justice systems of countries that speak these languages. In countries where English is widely spoken, the criminal justice system focuses less on restitution for the victims and more on the retribution for transgressors. Moreover, we see that this bleeds into our perception of color as well. A research study in 1954 shows us that Zhunya speakers have a hard time differentiating between orange and yellow because their language groups the two together. In parallel, Russian speakers are much more efficient than English speakers in differentiating between goluboloy, a lighter shade of blue, and sini, a darker shade of blue. Apart from Boroditsky's research, we moved on to other experiments that might support our point. We found that a research conducted in the 1980s showed that Hebrew-speaking children are aware of their gender a year earlier than Finnish children, due to the simple fact that the Hebrew language is littered with gender markers and Finnish has none at all.
With an overwhelming amount of evidence to support our conceptions, we agreed on exploring this further on our own. The theory behind our experiment was that students would view pink and red as separate colors as the English language assigns them two separate words. In reality, pink is simply a lighter shade of red. For the first part of our experiment, we put the colors red, pink, and orange on a board. We asked the audience which color, pink or orange, looked visibly closer to red. 91% noticed that pink was light red and thus chose it as their answer. For the second part of our experiment, we took another group of similar age and similar size and presented them with same colors. This time though, the colors were in words. This time, only 29% selected pink as their answer.
Orange. 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 Pink. Pink.
Pink.
Pink. Pink.
The conclusion drawn was this: language had manipulated the answers of the second group. As they could not view the actual colors, they relied on what their language had impressed upon them, that pink and red are separate colors. We carried on with several interviews. We interviewed an Indonesian student by the name of Rizky Wahyuddin. He talked about the grammar of the language, how it was flexible and as such easily allowed new words to be created. He also discussed how Indonesian sentence structure made speakers appear to be blunt in their speech.
I can say that it's still an evolving language. It's still something that has not been confirmed. We don't have, in schools, okay, like we teach students proper Indonesian. However, on the streets, we teach students, we teach everybody else, or we speak our own form of Indonesian. It's not a completely different form. It's just that, it's still Indonesian. I'm not saying that there's a huge difference. It's just that people tend to use phrases, abbreviations, these little words that you made up, and they would still make sense. And from that, I would be able to conclude that Indonesian is a flexible language, because right now I could just say something that sounds Indonesian and people would start using it as a word, and if it spreads enough, there you go, it's part of the language. It's still a very rapid, easily flexible language to how do you say it, to learn, I guess, to speak. Because in English, I can't just make up some random word, because most likely people will already have an alternative for what I'd have just invented. For example, I want to say something about drinking from a cup upside down, okay, and I make up a word for that. Now in English, no matter what you say, it's not going to make sense, because you're going to have to say that whole sentence. You cannot condense everything into one small word. However, in Indonesian, since it's something that it's a language that is flexible, you can turn one whole sentence into just one word, just because you say so, and if it spreads enough, boom, there you go. So because of that, I would say that Indonesian is 60% slang, 40% proper. Peep to the emphasis on verbs and how we tend to emphasize more on telling people what to do than the people themselves, or focusing on what we're doing at the moment rather than ourselves. So because of that, because of the slang, because of these verb tenses, because of also us referring to ourselves in third person, I would say that Indonesian is a simple and blunt language.
We interviewed a Mandarin-speaking student by the name of Nixon Tieng Ning Sen, who discussed how the use of different tones in language affects the Chinese society.
Hi, I'm Amar's friend, and currently this year I'm nearly 18. And at this point of my life, I speak around 3 languages fluently, and I can listen to 2 languages, but not converse in it that well. I only know a few words and a few sentences. So Amar has kindly asked me to help him with his tonal languages project. So the main topic would be about Chinese Mandarin. Now, for those of you who didn't already know, Chinese Mandarin is a tonal language, which means it has 4 tones, and the way you pronounce the words might have a different meaning if you do not pronounce it correctly and the one you intended to. For example, in China, the number 4 means 4, and in deaf, the word deaf itself in Chinese means 是. And you can see how similar it is, like 4, 4, but you can tell the difference. It's a tone. This is why in China, in some places in Southeast Asia as well, the number 4 is actually banned from the elevators, because in Chinese it means deaf, right? So they wouldn't want deaf to be on the elevator. Which is why it is important to know the tones you use in Chinese Mandarin. Another example of this would be the word mother and the word horse. So in the English language, it's 2 completely different words. One starts with M, the other starts with H. But in Mandarin, they both start with M. So in Mandarin, mother means ma, mama, and in Mandarin, horse is pronounced a ma. So you need to actually know the difference. Ma, 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 ma. It's kind of like the first one has an upper tone to it, and then the last one has like a lower tone to it. So let's say, for example, a sentence in Mandarin: Mom, I've returned from school. In Mandarin, it would be like 妈妈，我从学校回来了. And if you mispronounce it, let's say 妈妈，我从学校回来了. That's like a big no. Now this is not a huge problem for native Chinese speakers, because we're already used to how we pronounce the stuff. For example, even if we mispronounce a few words, the the person you're trying to talk to might already know what you're trying to say, because they can interpret it, because if the word doesn't make sense in the sentence, of course they'll automatically know that you're trying to say another word in Mandarin. How this has affected the behavior of the Chinese people is kind of, in my own theory, I think there's actually a theory behind it. So in China, if you go to China and you go to the streets, right, a lot of people are seen shouting, a lot of the times, like in the stalls, in the supermarkets, they're seen shouting. I think this is because they shout because they want to say loudly what they're pronouncing. Like, it's not really a shout, it's more like a loud sentence. And I think this is affected in the way how you portray some Asians to be quiet, like a stereotype. As a stereotype, some Asians are quiet because they are not that fluent in English, which is why they're more concerned about how they pronounce the words. For example, L and R, sometimes they're having trouble with that, etc. I haven't really experienced any sort of trouble with pronouncing the words in Mandarin and in English, because English is my first language, whereas Mandarin is my second language, so I'm pretty much used to them. So I think that it's not that big of a deal for us, for me personally.
We also interviewed Jill Ann Kay, a Spanish student of the University of London. Jill Ann Kay told us that the Spanish language assigns gender to every word and object. As a result, she perceives things like t-shirt and song as especially feminine. Most interestingly, Jill told us that the Spanish language does not have as many prepositions as English does. In Spanish, there is no distinction between in and within, or on and upon. As a result, the Spanish language affects how she imagines and perceives the world. Thus, we concluded this aspect of our project with satisfied contentment that our hypothesis had, in truth, been proven.
We then moved on with the second part of our project, human behaviour shaping language. A few centuries ago, the English language held such words such as amendation, deferder, and nidifice. These words have long since been discarded, and now the English dictionary is welcoming new words such as ovs, OMG, and hater. Why? Because languages are constantly developing and changing to cater to the needs of their speakers. During the Middle Age, if you were to laugh loudly, you were to kench. In the modern age, we have the word lol for that. As time passes, the meaning of words change in accordance to their use by their speakers. The word nice used to mean foolish. The word silly used to mean blessed. The word awful used to mean worthy of awe.
We devised another experiment and conducted 3 interviews to further investigate into this matter. The experiment we conducted focused on Urdu as a comparative language to English. We asked nearly a dozen Urdu speakers what they felt in one word when we called them an ullu, which is the Urdu word for owl. We then asked a similar number of English speakers the same when we called them an owl. The comparison was quite stark. Our English speakers associated the word owl with wisdom and cleverness, while our Urdu speakers associated ullu with foolishness and stupidity. To us, the experiment was solid proof that language can in fact be affected by human behavior. The same noun in 2 different languages has entirely different connotations, simply because of the society around them. Furthermore, we interviewed a Japanese-speaking student of Queen Mary University, London. She told us that Japanese culture upholds values of honor and respect. As such, the language is specifically designed to reflect those values. Honorifics are commonly used in the Japanese language. The suffix san is used by the Japanese people to refer to an elder or other respected individuals, such as a parent. We interviewed an Arabic teacher from Syria by the name of Marwa Hamid, and she talked about the effect Muslims had on the language of Arabic.
The Quran came in Arabic and the Islam came, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke Arabic. There is a lot of words in Arabic have 2 meanings. One is original meaning and the other one is the Sharia meaning. So you will have wudu. It was a word, Arabic, it is Arabic word, but it has 2 meanings. Wudu being clean, as in the linguistic meaning, and the act of wudu in the Sharia meaning. And you will take this to most of the word which you know usually. It have sometimes 2 meanings. It have a Sharia meaning, even hadith, like hadith is speech, but means speech, and you will have the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other things is a lot of words and terms it came in the Quran which change the people's view, like tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, depending on Allah, and all of this type of things. It came because of the Quran came in Arabic. So those terms become stronger and affected the people much more.
Janet Hellberg also told us that the German people are very clear in what they describe and their language reflects that. In German, a kettle is called water boiler and a desk is called a writing table. These were all examples of how human behavior affected and even shaped the languages of our world. And so, with the research conducted and the experiments and interviews carried out, our team was satisfied and felt that we had established that there was indeed a prominent relationship between language and human behavior.